This is the Tartarian Hidden Nation. This is really incredible stuff. This is something we're going to have in a future lecture as well. This is about the his story, about how history isn't really accurate reflection of what's happened. It's more just like some dudes who got paid by people who won to write it down. It's a little odd. And so this is one of those history things that seems to really stick out, and no one really can explain it very well. So I'm going to be showing you what the history mystery is. So the theory is that there is a land called Tartaria, also known as Tartarian. Tartai is another way it's pronounced sometimes, but more I call it Tartaria because it sounds cooler. And it was this massive nation that existed, apparently connecting the Americas, Russia, and Asia all together. Not all of Asia, but some parts of Asia. And it was a distinct nation of people. It has countless historical references. This is something that you find all over the place, and it's not in the mysterious land of Tartaria that we've never visited. No, it's like, oh yeah, we do trade with the Tartarians. They're very good at exporting these vital pieces of metal that we need for our construction. Just very commonplace, very basic, standard references to Tartaria. And very, very odd. You find it mentioned throughout our cultural literature too. It's mentioned in Shakespeare, in many of his plays. You find it mentioned indirectly in the Bible. A lot of trade and supplies and things of that nature mentioned dealing with the Tartarians. It's actually in our maps, like all of the maps around the world as a nation, up until the 17th century. So this is very recent. So like right around when America is becoming a country, Tartaria is still a place that everyone knows and references as the Tartarians. Now, it gets a little weird. So Tartarians apparently are a very old race of people, going all the way back to past the ancient Egyptians. And there's whole sorts of lore and whatnot thrown into this. And this is where it starts to get a little weird. So they're saying, like, basically it sounds like Tartaria is like Middle Earth. There's giants that are there, really, really tall people, very, very small people, dwarves, different sects, different tribes. And very big piece is that they had advanced design and technology. They're incredibly gifted at stone craftsmanship, and that was one of their big claims to fame, is their incredibly intricate and advanced technology when it came to architectural design. Now, you might be asking yourself, all right, Todd, so there's this giant nation stretching across Russia, Asia, America. Why have I never heard of it in any of my schools? Well, as you guys know, school is a complete lie machine. It has nothing of value. You should just do what you need to do to get by, scoot on through, and learn for yourself. Become a self-educated person. That's what being an owl is all about. But here are some of the things that we found about it that are very interesting. This particular slide here, though, is to note the architectural design is what you see here. So this is known as Tartarian design. Now, what makes this theory very interesting is you find these buildings sprinkled all throughout the areas that used to be mapped as Tartaria, and it's this design that otherwise doesn't make sense. You find it in the Asias, you find it in Russia, you find it in America, all across the board, this similar architecture, even though there shouldn't be any cultural connections there. To make matters more interesting, what we find is that the theory is that perhaps these buildings were built before by the Tartarians thousands of years ago, and as we invaded the land, people took over these buildings and just used them for themselves, and that's part of the explanation. Now, the reason and evidence they have to support this particular architectural claim is, if you look at some of these buildings, and you can check this out for yourself if you live in America, a lot of the Capitol buildings are built with Tartarian architecture, or the White House, for example, and if you look at them, it's incredible. If you know anything about craftsmanship, building houses, stoneworking, it is just the most incredible undertaking financially that you could imagine. Time-wise, this is stuff that's insane. Now, you have to imagine, these things are built kind of like cathedrals, and many cathedrals take hundreds, sometimes even 3, 4, even 500 years to build. And what's odd is you find them in America. And you have to ask yourself, how do you build a building without anyone bringing much attention to it in America in the 17th century? Keep in mind, this is, before electricity, power. These guys are doing this with saws, buggies, horse buggies, and they're making these massive stone infrastructures in America. It would have had to be in a time frame of less than 25, 30 years with no major technological advancements. And it's kind of odd. It's like, how do you make a building that takes 500 years to build, and how do you make it in 20 years when you have no advanced technology at all? And so that's kind of where the theory comes in. As we go deeper, we find that even the CIA has documentation about Tartaria. And what gets even more bizarre is why it might be gone. So, the CIA documents that were recently declassified about Tartaria say that the communist government of Russia and China both sought out to expunge the historical record of the Tartarians. It basically was going against their desires. As you know, communism is the one of the most evil systems you can imagine. It's genocidal, murderous. It is the definition of hatred of humanity. And one of the things they try to expunge is the individuality of the human. And so you can't have people who are proud of their nation or proud of their people in a communist state, because the communist state is a act of satanic evil. So they try to expunge these things. And the CIA documented the expunsion of this particular people. This group existed in not just like mythology, but up until the 17th century, they existed in our maps. As in, we designed our maps. You can still buy globes and maps that reference Tartaria. It was even included in the 18th century, as we have this photo down here below, in the nation of flags. Tartaria had 2 nation flags, one for essentially the West and the East, the Americans and the Russian and Asian sectors of Tartaria. Up until the 18th century, they had their flags. Now, this is where, obviously, we have to make a pretty bold claim. Tartaria's symbol, as you can see here, for their flag of nations up until the 18th century, was an owl on a flag. That's right, an owl on a flag. Now, what I'm saying is, I think the owls are lineologically linked to the Tartaria. I think that we are the Tartarians. I think that we now take claim to all Tartarian history, all infrastructure, all buildings. Our people, the owls, now take ownership for that. We are continuing our lineage, and I think that as a people, we can all accept that Tartarian history is our history, the history of the owls. We are a unique people. We are recognized by our unique culture, and I think that that is the path forward for us on this History's Mysteries. But now that we've talked about Tartaria, now that we've talked about the history, what do you guys think? What do you think of this? What are your thoughts? What comes to your mind? Do you think it's real? Do you think it's fake? What do you think's going on with this bizarre Tartarian nation?